It's half past ridiculous, and we're seeking a Sentium Antium. Well, good morning, everybody. Morning, Carl. How's things going for you today? Oop,
Yeah, it's all good.
you'll have
Really
to do
good
that.
week.
You'll have to do that again. I missed a button.
Aha.
Sorry about that. So, how are you doing today? Everything working out for you?
Yeah, it's all great. Although, unfortunately, I have to go back to Canada today, which is not so great, but only short term. A little gap, and then I'm back. Hopefully, very soon.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a number of people out there who just spat coffee across the room. Not looking forward to going to Canada.
Oh, you're playing with my voice, are you?
Well, no, not really. But
Okay.
no, I just most people would think that getting out of the States is the preferred scene to do right now. So
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Yeah, I get it now. I agree because I've been kind of advising people to do the same thing. But unfortunately, love has a way of overruling
yeah,
your sane mind. and
yes, most definitely. Speaking of sane minds, for those that are following the Clifford Shirley's response to Heather's Precipice on the 18th of October is out. And basically, he's passing the buck, washing his hands of it. He's not making a decision, which is quite telling because that's his job, and he's not doing his job. So either he's, well, it certainly has to be something other than he's being a nice guy and he's just not ruling on it because it's wrong or not there. It is. He was very adversarial in the discussions. I'm sure if he had the opportunity, he would probably climb down Heather's throat like a nasty little spike-covered spider. But he didn't.
well, I think if we do, yeah, I think if we do a comparison, John, we have to look at that judge over in was it Alberta? The judge that was climbing all over the World Freeman Society and saying how it was all bullshit and it was all crap and you're going to get yourself thrown in jail if you follow these kind of processes and it was just a big blast out to all of these departments, law firms, and police and other agencies to say, you can do what you want with these guys because they're having no power. What he did, the Clifford Shirley decision was he did the same thing almost, blasted all over it, saying that it was all bullcrap, and then said, well, I'm going to ignore it. I'm not going to rule on it, and I'm going to pass this to somebody else to make a ruling, even though everything that you've just told me and I've just said is all utter bullshit. I'm not going to do anything about it. It's crazy. I
Yep.
mean, there has to be a reason for that, and you can make your own judgment as to what that is.
Yeah, and it's really really telling when they say, "Excuse me, I'm running away now." You take this up with somebody else, especially when they've been adversarial since the start, and you can see in their words and their energy that they would love nothing more than to throw the book at him. But they didn't. They passed it off to the next guy up the chain, and who knows, it might be up the chain several times. But Heather did mention in an interview that this is all how it's planned, and it's not going to turn out the way most people expect it will. That outcome wasn't built into the system, so we're just a trickle down now. We're waiting for it all to happen because when they actually admit, yes, you're right, drop the charges or not guilty or whatever, they're admitting to all of it. They're admitting to the foreclosure. They're admitting to they have no power, everything. And so, yeah, I can see why they'd be a little bit reluctant.
Yeah, they're going to be playing, hide the pea right now, I think. This is going to go the shell game, passed around from place to place, and hot potato even. see who's going to make a decision. And I even mentioned that I expected that they're going to try and push this all the way up to the Supreme Court, who's going to say, well, we're too busy to deal with this until, maybe sometime 3 years down the line.
Yeah, sure. There is that possibility, but I think the Heather's plan for that and has some safeguards in there. I mean, the ledgering continues to grow every day. It's growing more and more, and although there's no hope in hell anybody's going to get paid for it, it's on the books and it doesn't look good. So we'll see. We'll see. I mean,
I think, as we mentioned last week, and I think we mentioned most weeks, you have to look around at what's going on in the world, not just in the US, but, you look at what's happening in different countries. I mean, Zimbabwe, that's blown up now. Mugabe's been ousted. He's no longer the president, and he was just a shoo-in anyway. Just one of those ridiculous dictators that the cabal throw in to control their farm, which is all Zimbabwe was. It used to be called Rhodesia. If people were or were not aware of that, it was once called Rhodesia when it was English owned. Cecil Rhodes set it up in probably 1800s sometime, and raped the country clean, along with a lot of the other countries in Africa. And that's another one that's getting cleared up now, which may or may not have some relevance to the Zim issue of currency. I don't know. Have you heard anything on that one, John? Because I really haven't heard anything since it blew up. I've not looked at the DNR sites to see whether they're all over this and saying, "Oh, this is it. This is where your Zim becomes, value of 1-to-1 to the dollar, and you're suddenly a multi-trillionaire."
Yeah, I haven't looked at that in any sort of depth. Danny brought it up in a conversation earlier on, and I went and had a look at some of these, horrendously undervalued currencies. And one of them you can get, what is it, 10 trillion for like $1 US. And I was thinking, just for shits and giggles, wouldn't it be neat to have a $10 trillion note sitting in your pocket, right? Yeah, I might still do that. I'm going to dig in a little bit of research on that, but it wouldn't be for the speculation aspect of it. It would be for the look, isn't this cool? I got $200 trillion in this, frame in my wall.
Well, it kind of also sets the tone for how ridiculous money and value of money actually. How you can have a $1 bill, put it next to a Zimbabwe dollar, whatever the hell they call them, Zim, sorry, and the $1 bill is actually worth more than the $100 billion bill that you have next to it.
Yeah.
100 billion Zim bill you have next to it. I mean, I had a conversation with Tara this morning when we were talking about a TED talk that she brought up about the value of money and the changeover. What the currency, basically, the countries that are pushing towards no currencies and no money or electronic, let's say. And realistically, how people perceive and what people perceive money to actually be. And there was an analogy I always used. Some people listening might remember it because I've used it often enough. But for a very long time, how to describe the money system. And I started out with, just two people on a desert island somewhere, or even a big island. It doesn't matter. There's just two people. I want to be the banker. You, John, you can be the guy who wants $100,000 from me. Don't ask why. This is just an analogy, a hypothetical.
A question did cross my mind.
I know there's always some smart ass that says, "Why would I want $100,000?" But no, this is just hypothetical. So you come to me, you want $100,000, and I say, "Sure, you can have $100,000." but I want you to pay me $5,000 in because I'm giving you $100,000. And you say, sure, I'll do that. Yeah, lending me your money. So yeah, I'll pay you back the interest that you want. Fine. Now, the first two questions I have, firstly, where the hell do I get $100,000 from? That is the first question you have to put in your mind. Secondly, how the hell are you going to pay back the $5,000? Because it's only you and I. It was only $100,000 created or given, and there is nobody else for you to earn that $5,000 back. I've actually had people say, "Oh, well, I'll work. I occasionally do it. No, I'll sell this, I'll do that. I'll work for somebody, and pay me, and then I'll pay this extra $5,000, and then I'll pay you back the $105 that I owe you." I'm like, well, think about this. You just told me that you're going to pay me $105,000 back when there's only $100,000 in existence. How are you going to do it? The first thing is that they actually said that. They did not comprehend that they couldn't pay it back because it didn't exist. And the second thing that they just glossed over completely was where the hell I got that 100,000 from in the first place. And once people got their mind around that little concept, it was like, oh yeah, that's strange. Because all I do after that was expand it and say, well, it's not just you and I. You know, we've got 300 million people in the US, and you do that times 300 million or whatever, and you get the money system as it currently is. And what happens is that you can do business and you can earn that $5,000 and you can pay me back the 105. But unfortunately, somebody else isn't going to be able to make that because you've just taken the $5,000 out of what I and others have loaned, because that's how the system works. So I'm, through no fault of my own, not going to be able to pay this money back. And when people understand and comprehend that that is the economic system, that gets people angry, that gets people annoyed.
Well, I'd say that's precisely what happened in the 30s, in the Depression in the 30s. For the teens and 20s, the banks opened up and dumped all kinds of money onto the system, and everybody was doing great, and wages were high, and everything was awesome. And then the 30s rolled around, and they just withdrew a whole bunch of money out of the system. And all of a sudden, there wasn't enough to go around in the old way, and people lost their shirts thinking it's their fault, they couldn't earn it. But it wasn't. It was totally contrived and totally manufactured. Money system in a centralized system is a bad thing because it's too easily controlled. The new value system we're working on bringing out is a complete departure of that, because your value will never go down. You will never depreciate. And you know, what is your value, right? If you really think about it, the value is potentially infinite, because who knows what you're going to come up with. You could basically come up with a widget that solves all the world's problems, and you know, what's that worth? So I brought this up, when was this? I think it was last week. It might have been on one of the members' shows, where I'm kind of interested in watching the Alaska reality programs. And there's one I watched called Edge of Alaska that one of the fellas in there actually brought it up really, really well. He says, what exactly is value? If someone gets a house and they get it for a kiss and both parties are happy, then the value of that house is a kiss. So, you know, what really is the value of something? Is it the artificial number that's placed on it, or is it what it's actually worth to the people who need it?
Well, it's a perception anyway, isn't it, John? I mean, that's one of the things that I've had conversations about. And actually, Steve in the chat there said, would they just revalue and then cancel the old currency and reprint the new currency? But basically, all they're doing there, if you look, you see, I'm of an older generation, not the oldest generation, but you know, there's times when I could remember where you could buy a loaf of bread in the UK, it might cost you 10 pence, you know. That loaf of bread now probably costs about £2.50 in the
Yep.
UK. Same thing happens over in Canada. I mean, you'll have a better recollection in your younger days of how much a loaf of bread actually cost
Well,
and how much it costs now.
I remember 17 cents for a gallon of gasoline.
Well, yeah, I mean, I actually came to Canada in 2000, and a litre at the time used to cost about 50 to 55 cents. You know, the average now is $1 and above. Perhaps it's probably a bit more than that now. And yeah, that doesn't sound like a lot in 17 years, but it went up very, very quickly and then has stabilized for a little while, and it's kind of been at that price for a while now. But it's just what we will accept. At some point in the future, I mean, a loaf of bread is still a loaf of bread, although what's happened is they've actually reduced the size of it now so that they're not making a loaf of bread quite as big as they used to. And the same goes with other things. I mean, we can always look at, you know, Cadbury's cream eggs, for instance. You know, now they're less than the size of a freaking blackbird egg compared to, you know, a chicken egg that they might have been at one point. They're reducing the size of it and the cost is still going up. And it's our perception of value. At some point, are we going to turn around and say, well, I'm not going to pay $4 for a loaf of bread? I'm just not going to do it. So they revalue it, and you make your currency so that now that loaf of bread is 50 cents because they revalued the currency, and the charge now is 50 cents. And now you think, oh, that's really good value. I'll have two of them. It's still the same size loaf of bread. The same work went into it. It's just that the currency, the money that we used to buy the damn thing, has just been changed arbitrarily. And now we think it's value for money. Whereas before, when it was $4, we said, I'm not paying that.
Yeah, it's
everything's in the mind.
Well, it's a really common mistake that everybody makes too, and there's not many people that I've talked to that understand this. Gold has never changed in value. An ounce of gold today will buy the same thing it bought 200 years ago. The value of the product that it's acquiring is the same, as far as the monetary value, the number that's put on it. The only thing that's changed is the value of the currency you're buying the gold with. That's why, you know, they say, oh, gold's going up and down. It's not the gold going up and down, it's the dollar value going up and down. Which is another way to illustrate that too. The fiat currency is highly fluid, and it depends on confidence as to whether it's got any value. So,
well, this goes back to the discussions that we've had in the past about my theories on the concepts of value and the concepts of exchange.
Yep.
And that everything is based on our belief system and our confidence that things have a value and that there is any such thing as value. But because we place a value on everything, absolutely everything, you know, even the value of the love that we give to somebody has a value, because it means I give you love and you've got to love me back, and you've got to love me back the same or better. It's a value on everything, and it's a perception. It's bullshit. It really is, because if we remove that concept of value, then there is no reason necessarily for an exchange. Mm-hmm. We just give, and you know, there will be an exchange at some point, but not a direct exchange. We will receive from somebody else when we need something, and we will give to whoever we need to give to because they need something, or because we just want to give. In the case of love, you just want to give that. People need to get used to this particular concept, because if you want to look to a society that doesn't have money, doesn't exist with money, then you have to remove that concept of value and the confidence in value, because it means nothing. As I've just explained to you, the currency that you have in your pocket you believe it has value because everybody else accepts that it does, and because you're told that it's worth 10, 20, $100, whatever it is. What does that buy? That value changes based on economics and the change of things, and it will get to the point where the physical currency has been reduced in circulation, and our ability to earn that currency has been reduced to such a point that they're going to have to make a change. And that's what's happening right now. And I've said this before, there's a concern, because the money system, as far as I'm concerned, is a medium of control. Once we get rid of that concept of value, money means nothing, so it removes the control. But if we still have a confidence or a belief that money or currency has value, even if they revalue it so that we have more now and we can buy more, it doesn't matter. It's still a medium of control. We need to remove all of that and comprehend that this planet doesn't need to exist with money, with currency. We just give. Mm-hmm. Everybody just gives. Everybody just does. And the planet will carry on. There's no need for jobs. No need for the education system the way it currently is. No need for an awful lot of things. Once we comprehend that money doesn't exist, doesn't need to exist, value is a stupid concept, life would change drastically, and the way we live on this planet would change drastically. And I know we've had this discussion as well with audiences in the past. We've asked the question, or they've asked the question, who's going to get rid of garbage and who's going to do all of these shitty, crappy jobs? Well, firstly, many of those shitty, crappy jobs won't need to exist because they're there right now because of the requirement for employment and the ability to earn money, which isn't really needed. So once that concept is gone from your mind, you won't need to do a lot of those jobs. You won't need to do things just to earn money, because there's no need for it at that point. There will be a certain need to do things like the removal of trash, but that's another thing. How much trash are we going to generate in a society that's not based on consumption anymore? Capitalism. And the idea of packaging, processed food, stuff like that. All of that will change. So the way that we generate trash that we currently generate would change along with it. Yes, there probably will be some trash, but we'll find ways of, making plasma energy out of it, maybe. I don't know. There are lots and lots of very smart people on this planet, and it won't take us long to change the way we live daily. We just have to make that change in the mind, the concepts of how we live and what we perceive is truth. That all needs to change. And when you can see that, because I've been able to see this for a long time, and I've had discussions with people that said, no, I cannot get it into my head how we can exist without money. People just cannot see it. And I can. I get it. I understand it. I could live it. But there are many, many people who really can't. And that's something that we have to get across as a new concept. And I think that's why everything that's going on with Heather at the moment, and the TDAs and this idea of having unlimited money is kind of a step towards that, because when you get everybody actually has access to fund limited money, then value, your comprehension of the value of it disappears. When you've got so much of it, is there any value anymore? Will our minds switch across or will we stay in that concept of value, and now everything just becomes very cheap for us because we have access to all the money to be able to buy whatever it is that we want?
Well, I mean, there's a whole bunch of things that go along with that, and that the profit hounds are going out of business because there's no point. You know, if you've got a bank account with too many zeros to count, what's another $20 going to mean to you? It's nothing. And it's the principle of the thing. Well, the principle of the thing is that the seeking of profit is a way of taking advantage of your neighbors. And yes, I can see how in the current structure, it's sort of a necessary evil. But when you simply take away the need for profit, right? Look at this very simplistically. Take away the need for profit. And what's going to change, right? Right now, pretty much, that's going to change everything, because the vast majority of what goes into any product, as far as the cost of producing or moving that product, is energy. Energy's free. Energy's always been free. And like the electricity, the state puts a dam up and then starts charging their residents, $3 a kilowatt hour for electricity, when the electricity belonged to the people in the first place. It belongs to everybody, and it's there. It's freely available. All you got to do is generate the infrastructure to deal with it.
Well, that's it. If you look at it, John, that's exactly what they all do. Everything that we deal with on a daily basis is based on a third party involvement, or somebody who has taken control of doing something that we should be doing for ourselves. So generating electricity, we should have the ability to have self-contained units that we can either carry with us, or we'll sit on the side of whatever living accommodation we decide is going to be our favored location.
Mm-hmm.
And it should just be able to generate the electricity that we need. The food production, that somebody else has gotten involved in the process and in the distribution of that food. So somebody else has gotten involved in that. And banking is another one. Somebody said there was value and we've got money involved, and somebody got involved in dealing with that. And that's exactly what banks are at the moment. They're just that third party facilitator of the, what do they call it now? It's the accounting, let's say, of anything, the exchanges that take place between you and I. A mortgage for a house. We exchange houses. The bank just become the third party involved in that. Everything has become about somebody else involved, and when they do that, they want profit. They want the profit as part of their function. So removing the profit, of course, will remove their desire to exist, because, well, why the hell should I do this? Well,
Steve.
Society.
Steve brought up something in the chat here. He says, if the Heather filings will not result in any monetary payout, will it create debt relief, since the system is illegal and this fact is recorded in the public record? Brianna says that take away the need to pay bills and taxes, and a lot of the need for profit starts going away. And Steve says, exactly. Will the filings take away the need to pay, or debt relief? Steve, the way the system is written originally, there was never supposed to be money. There was never supposed to be these bills of exchange that we call money to deal with any of this stuff. The way the system was originally written, you would go to the store and order your lawnmower, and the clerk at the store would hand you what's called a true bill. And it's a very specific piece of paper. It's a very specific format, very specific information on it. You add some more information on it, basically accepting that bill for value, returning it for settlement, discharge, and closure, with your account number on it, hand it back to the merchant. Your purchase is paid, and that purchase now goes to the Receiver General for settlement, and they simply balance the books. That's the way the system is written originally. There was never supposed to be money involved. But that has been very deliberately hidden from everybody. Now we know it exists. We know it works. We've tested it. We haven't done anything massively huge. We didn't buy a $500,000 motorhome, but we have tested it, and we know that that's exactly how things work. So the idea of having a community which doesn't operate on the almighty dollar is not a foreign thing, and it's not a stretch to think about, because the system already exists for that. And it's still a system of accounting, yes, but that's what countries do. That's the corporate governments are there to regulate commerce, and they got to have all their I's crossed and their T's dotted, and everything's got to be in the black, and all of these stupid rules. So yeah, they're going to have a system of accounting of some sort, but to demand that you have currency to pay is not a requirement in the existing legal structure. Now, that existing legal structure wasn't working, so Heather went in and changed it, and she's ushering in a new form of legal system, which is actually a lawful system. It's just got to work its way through the ranks.
Yeah, I guess if we operate in the way that the Bills of Exchange Act, which exists in most countries that I'm aware of, there is a Bills of Exchange Act or something that means the same thing in whichever country you exist in, that mentions what money is, species of money, and it's a lot more than you actually believe it is. And the Bills of Exchange allows us to do as John's just mentioned there, to exist where anything is a consumer purchase, which means that you are the end consumer and will be using it, allows you to offset it against an account that you already have as let's say a shareholder country that you live in. The gross domestic product of a country gives it a value, and you as I'm not going to use citizen, as a person living on the land within that landmass is, has the ability to share in that value, in that gross domestic product value. So your account will fluctuate based on the GDP of the country, but you are entitled to a share of that, and any consumer purchase that you make, all you do, as John said, is sign receipt, return it, and the accounts are balanced. Money is taken, or numbers are taken from your account and put into, the vendor's account. Who might? It's just a system of accounting, so that the whole world is operating on movement of energy and work that's being done by the people of each individual country. I mean, once it becomes planet Earth and we all exist, then yes, we can have a central accounting system for the whole planet. We can have this nasty little phrase, one world order.
Yep.
But as long as it's done transparently and completely for the benefit of the public, and not hidden and secret and for the benefit of those that it currently benefits, I don't see any reason why that can't actually happen either. It's just that right now the New World Order, single currency and the single government has all bad connotations to it, basically because it's something that wants to be done by a secret group of well, I won't even say people because we've no idea what the hell they are. But there's secret group that potentially controls or does control the whole world, and they want to maintain that control, but remove all of this secrecy and put in transparency, and the whole world just becomes a accounting system for balancing numbers based on the energy of work and the like that's put in each individual country, because everything's already paid for, everything's already built. You know, the food that's generated and you find on the grocery store shelf, that's already been grown, it's already been picked, it's already been processed, the work's already been done. There's a value that's associated with that, and that value is the cost that you see when you pick it up off the shelf. And if we're going to go on and continue with that value-based system, then what we do is we fill our shopping cart to the stuff that we need, not want. This is not a greed-based system. This is something that we need. We need a certain amount of food to feed us. We need a lawnmower to cut the grass, if we really do. You know, we don't need 4 or 5 cars. We need one. We need one of certain things. We need a house. We don't need 4 houses. You know, if you want to live in 4 different countries, well, pick one and move there. You can't live in and have a house in 4 different countries. You can now, but in this new system, that's not the whole process. That's not the idea. We just need to live simply. We need to live within our means and remove greed, remove profit, remove this bullshit. And we can operate that way. Bills of exchange will allow us to just consume a purchase. Thank you very much. There's enough food for the next couple of days. I'll take it home too, and then we'll eat it. And I need some more back, and the process goes on. There won't even be the need for a friggin' freezer to fill full of frozen food, because why would you need frozen food when you can pick up fresh at the store whenever you needed it every other day?
Yeah. The concept of bills of exchange, if you haven't looked at this before, you really need to look at this closely, because you'll find out in your research that there's a shitload of documents out there that could be considered negotiable instruments. Basically, as a rule of thumb, if it has a signature on it, you can convert it into a bill of exchange, and which is money. So it doesn't matter what the document is. If it's got a signature on it, this is actually in the legislation, that if a merchant or vendor receives an incomplete bill of exchange, they are within their rights to complete it. So if you're filling out a credit card application and you don't realize that is going to, that is a bill of exchange, you're not going to put all of the pertinent information on it. The one who gave it to you recognizes it as a bill of exchange, so they fill out the rest of the information, they monetize it, they sell it, and they're making money hand over fist, and you don't even realize they're doing it. This goes on all the time. This is
bankers and banks are the main proponents of the creation, the facilitation, and the movement of this stuff, these species of money. Mm-hmm. You don't even realize that the loan application form that you fill in is a promissory note. It's money. It becomes money when you sign it.
That's right. And, even with the mortgage or with the credit card application or any of that stuff, as soon as you sign the promissory note, it's paid for. You have created the funds to pay for it. They're not converted into species of it, money of exchange at this point. They're simply money of account, but it's still money. It's still under the definition of what money is. A promissory note is money. So when you sign that promissory note at the bank for whatever, $300,000 for your house, the bank didn't loan you anything. They took your $300,000 that you created, put it in their books as an asset, wrote you a check, wrote that down as a liability, and then you don't get to see the asset side of the books. All you get to see is the liability side of the books, which they, instead of being their liability, which is what it truly is, they force that back onto you, and you think it's your liability. So you're paying for it twice, which is ridiculous. And then because interest, certainly. And And then they take all that paperwork and bundle it up and sell it again. So they're getting paid 3 times.
Oh, and then they insure it. So if you fail to pay, then they get a payout on the insurance as well.
Yep. And it basically comes down to people not realizing exactly what money is. Because if they understood it, they'd be asking the questions at the bank going, well, what do you mean pay you back? I just gave it to you. You owe me. And all I got from you is these bloody promises to pay. So, I mean, all you're doing is exchanging promises. That's it. There's no actual value per se changing hands. It's just a number on a computer screen. What's it worth to type a number in a computer? What's that? If you're thinking of time, if you're thinking of labor, what's the value of typing a number in a computer? And they're getting paid ridiculous sum of money to do that, or ridiculous sum of energy, I should say, because you're not really paying them back in money. You're paying them back in labor and time and energy, in your talents, essentially.
Well, that's it, because the very fact that you are working, in quotes, every day, is part of that system. You're putting energy by expending energy to do a job of work, whatever that might be, which is where your payment goes. That's how you repay the system, partially. But then you also get, if you like, a reward in currency or in credit. Actually, most of we get paid in credit, not actual currency. And then you have to respend that credit into the system to pay bills and to repay the mortgage that you already supplied in the first place. That was your monetary value, your promise to pay.
Yeah, so you're working for the company. You're working for the company, getting company script, spending it at the company store where they jack the prices up 6,000%, but you can only buy it from the company store. It's the same game that's been played out over and over and over again. It's just way too big for most people to see.
And that's why I use that desert island analogy and start right from the very smallest perceptions of it. Because when people see that, they go, holy shit. And, the realization kicks in that, the very smallest aspects of this, it's so obvious. But when you expand it to include, hundreds of thousands and millions and then billions of people, then that's how they manage to get away with it, and why bankruptcies occur so often. People, trying to live and survive and through of their own, are not able to repay these loans, in quotes, that they have, and pay bills and so on. It's a contrived system.
Well, there was a fella down.
Unfortunately, go ahead. Yeah.
There was a fella down in the States who just simply didn't accept that garbage, and the bank took him to court. They demanded repayment. He says, "Okay, fine, I'll be happy to do that. Do you accept promissory notes?" And the banker had to say yes because the guy held up a $20 bill. And so the banker said yes. The guy says, okay, great. So he sat down at his desk. He wrote up a promissory note, handed it to the judge. The judge handed it to the banker and said, you're paid. Case dismissed.
Yep.
Now,
I've known that happen in quite a few cases, but the problem is, in many cases, even the judges are not necessarily aware that what they've just been given is actual payment, and they won't accept it. Ridiculously so, but I know that that's happened. They've refused to accept that, yet everything else points to promissory notes as being payment. Yep. So why won't you accept my promissory note? And actually, when we think about it, this is what Peter of England was doing in regards to Weir Bank. If anybody remembers Weir Bank, I don't even know if Peter's still around and it's still going. But he took promissory notes from all of the members who wanted to join the bank, and then he kept hold of those. They were promissory notes within the system, They were species of money. And then he issued checkbooks, which then were units of accounting of credit based on the promissory note that was hosted with him. This is exactly what happens with every single bank account. Every single bank account out there. To some extent, there is credit, there is promissory notes that are paid into a bank account, and a checkbook is issued to then give credit. So every other bank in the world, this cartel of banks, was doing exactly the same thing as WearBank was doing, but they were not honoring any of the checks that were being issued by WearBank, because WearBank was operating outside of this cartel of banks. And of course, if everybody realized that this is exactly what banks are doing, then the confidence in banks and banking would collapse as well. So that's why WearBank was crushed as quickly as possible by being refused to be accepted everywhere.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, that's one of the secrets of the rich folk, is that they know how to deal with negotiable instruments. And it's really not that hard. You say, I've got an instrument here. Who wants to buy it? And somebody will buy it. I mean, there's a sucker born every minute.
Yeah, it's usually an investment firm of some form.
Yeah.
Because this is what happens with a lot of your mortgage loan applications. They become securitized, bundled together, and sold to investment companies, saying, well, this is a mortgage or a loan of just arbitrarily $250,000. They bundle it together with lots of others, and then they have a bundle that might be worth, £4.5 million, dollars, whatever it is, and they sell that to an investment firm because that's the face value of that bundle. But because you're paying interest, that bundle will become valued at, let's say, $7 million over a period of time because of the interest payments attached to it. That's how investment firms and investments make money, the biggest ones anyway. They receive the interest that you guys out there with all these loans and mortgages are paying back, and that the bank sold to these investments and got paid twice, really, because one, it was you that created them in the first place. They then sold it for probably at least the face value of full mortgage to an investment firm, and the investment firm then receives that interest over a period of time from you. So the bank got paid twice, and you end up paying twice. So the whole process is a complete and utter eye-opening. Many people who have no clue whatsoever how this functions.
Yeah, Space of Love brings up an interesting point. She says it's just energy and there's no real value, and we drive ourselves crazy every day because of it. And that's absolutely true. And,
it is.
And that's part of the reason why we're talking about it, is to get people thinking about the absurdity of, one piece of paper has X amount of value, another piece of paper, which is essentially identical, has no value. Doesn't work. If that paper in that format is valuable, then all paper in that format is valuable. And this is kind of a necessary thought process to go through in what's coming up, in that you don't have to have a wad of paper in your pocket to go out for dinner. You can, or to buy groceries, or to fill up your car. I would prefer if you didn't fill up your car, because it makes a mess of the environment. But we got to deal with what we have to work with at the moment. So just get it through your head that you don't have to have this fancy colored pieces of plastic in your pocket in order to obtain the things that you need. And it's I got a feeling there's going to be a bunch of people that are going to have a real hard time with that. A lot of us who have lived with very little, we understand the value of barter. We understand the value of simply doing something for somebody else because it's the right thing to do, because it's going to come back to you. It will. Every single time it'll come back. And it may not be right away. It may not be this week, but it'll be when you need it. And, having a reputation as someone that's always willing to help and always, a big smile on their face and you don't ask for anything, those people usually get all the assistance they could possibly handle when the time arises that they need it. People who are greedy and profit mongers and you want to mow my lawn, it's going to cost you $25. Those people are not going to get anywhere when it comes down to crunch time. And I don't want to say the popularity within the community is going to make a difference, but it will make a difference. If the community doesn't like you, chances are you're not going to be able to survive there because nobody will deal with you. So it touches absolutely every part of life when you look at it. And it's ridiculously simple to make it work. You offer your services, offer your help freely, and everybody does that. And that's it. That's all we got to do is just, treat each other like family. And when you get into a situation, you can put a sign up going, hey, my water heater broke. Anybody got a water heater? Somebody's going to show up with a water heater going, yeah, you helped me out last week. All here. Cheers. It's going to work. It'll take several generations for us to get it really solidified so that it's so completely fluid and natural, because it's going to seem really odd for the first little while for most of us.
Well, there's an awful lot who their daily existence is lack. So you see it every Black Friday, which it's coming up. So, but you see exactly. They live in a system of lack, and because they believe that they're getting a discount and getting something cheap, they start fighting over it, and they start punching people and grabbing for things because all of a sudden it's cheaper. When and if this system really changes to a state where you can just have it all, it's in essence is free. All you're really doing is signing a signature. What are those guys going to do? Are they just going to go completely mental? Or are they going to quickly understand that they don't need to go in and just fill 7 carts and 3 vans and drive off with it all? Because it's irrelevant. It doesn't matter. They just come in and get what they need when they need it. It's going to be there. But I get the feeling there's going to be a lot of these Black Friday people who are going to be knocking down the doors to grab this free shit, And that's not the way it is meant to be, and it's not the way it should be. So there is a mental subset of people that are going to have to make some big changes, because that's their existence. That's been their existence for so long.
Yeah, there will be, I'm certain of it, there will be, excuse me, a portion of the population which will lose it. And they'll figure it out pretty fast that it was a big mistake to do that. And, because it's one thing to dream about having, it would be so nice to have 20 million. I'd have all these things. And it's another thing to have all these things and have to deal with it all. And we hear this story over and over and over again of well-off individuals who downsize, and they are so happy they got rid of the garbage. I haven't heard one story yet of anybody who has chosen to downsize who went, well, that was a mistake, and rebuilt their large cache of crap.
And that's all it is, because, of course, we're in that capitalistic system. Buy shit, 4 o'clock in the morning, TV ads, and, buy one, get one free. Firstly, the first one, buy one, well, it's a piece of shit in the first place, what you're buying it for. Then you think you're getting value, so you end up getting 2. And you think you're getting a deal, and it's not the case. It's just a way of making you spend more money. Yeah. It's a perception that you think you're getting something for nothing or something for cheaper. big marketing, sales techniques, all that stuff's going on. But the very fact that they sell you into having to buy that in the first place is how you end up with a large house full of shit that you really don't need. And I know I've had the conversation myself. I buy this because I need it. And at that moment in time, I did need it. And then I've done it myself at home. I'll keep this because I'll probably need it at some point in the future. And
well,
it sits there for another 10 years because it never used.
All the stuff that I have, with the exception of a few things that I need to have, I never paid for. They were all gifts. All of the stuff that I spent money on was... I can justify it and say, yes, I need it because I'm using it. But if I didn't have it, I would just do it some other way. Like my computer system. I don't need such a massively huge computer system all the time. I'm only doing videos once in a while now. So I can kind of look at the stuff that I purchased, the stuff that I spent money on to obtain are, not necessarily toys, but certainly not required. All of my dishes, my cooking utensils, half of my bedding, my bedroom suite, they were all gifts. My big lazy boy chair was a gift. So, if you really, really think about it, I'm sure a lot of people could relate to this. The stuff that they have in their lives that they actually need, they didn't pay for. They were given those things. Young people, when they move out of the house, there's usually a ritual, a raid in the kitchen. And, you get some of the pots and pans, you get some of the dishes. You don't have to go buy your own. You can if you want, but it's not necessary. And I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who can relate to that, who can look at what they have and the stuff that they actually need, they obtained other ways other than actually buying it. Now, of course, there's going to be some it's 100% purchased. It's on 100% their own thing. I'm just kind of generalizing, looking at the big picture overall.
Yeah, even then, though, it's a case of the stuff that we do have, it was purchased for many times a one-off use.
Yep.
Certainly in the case of any kind of construction or DIY stuff, there are certain things that, you end up having to buy because you had a little project and it never gets used again. And it sits there in the garage or in the shed, or if you've got those things, or in the basement, wherever. Things like that just sit around doing nothing in the case that you might need it at some point in the future, and that's your mindset. Well, I might need it in the future, so I'll hang on to that. In a world where you can just get you need when you need it, is there going to be a system that's set up? Well, you have a construction project and you need, a circular saw. Well, instead of buying one, just go down to, wherever there's an outlet for these things, pick one up and then use it for whatever you need to. And then can you take it back to them? Or is there somewhere else it can be taken to where it'll become useful for somebody else? As long as the thing works, does it matter whether it's new? Are you going to buy something and then say, well, I'm only going to buy new? This frustrates me about people who buy cars. I only buy new cars. Why? I've never bought a new car in my goddamn life. And I never intend to. Even if I had all the money in the world, buy a new car. But that's the perceptions. They think everything's wonderful because it's brand new. No, if it works fine and does the job it's meant to do, then what's the problem? If the damn thing's broken, then we get rid of it, and of course it's useless. But,
well, that also brings up the idea that, if profit is not the driving factor, are we going to have crap products? And
yes, we've had that discussion too.
Yeah, and I'm inclined to think that no, we won't. We're not going to have the cheapest you can make with the highest volume and the cheapest possible products out there. We're going to have the best products out there. And those are the only ones that are going to survive.
And those companies will still exist, but again, they may move towards a system where they have robots that do all the work, and that's happening now already. So, the people that are currently employed with these companies because they need to be employed so that they can earn money, so that they can pay the interest that makes the economic system work, that's not going to be a requirement. So these jobs are not going to be required. These companies don't have to be based on profit, don't have to have workers that are constantly employed, because that whole subsystem of economics isn't needed anymore. That company can still exist because we might still need a fridge, but they produce, a couple of hundred or a couple of thousand or a couple of million, whatever their requirement is, and their customer base, because if it's a worldwide customer base, then they'll produce more. But when the warehouse fills up and there's nothing else going out because it's not needed, the plant shuts down. It doesn't need to carry on working. It's just there next time when a new batch is needed, and they'll produce the best, and the stuff that's out in that system will, as I've just mentioned, will recycle. You go in, you pick one up from the store if you need it, and then you take it back afterwards. And then somebody else who needs it, they have it. It doesn't have to be brand new. Are you going to benefit from getting a brand new saw?
I apologize if there's an etiquette here in the server to say hello when you walk into a room. So I'm walking into a room. I guess I'm not being noticed, or I am being noticed. I just want to say hello. Good morning. My name is Shell. And I'm here just to share, and I'll head on out.
Thanks, Shell. Yeah, it's a kind of. Oh, she went, so never mind. Yeah, the whole system of the usage and the comprehension of new use and the best quality. I mean, the stuff 100 years ago, they used to make the best quality, and they always had customers because there was always somebody else who wanted their product. But there was no requirement to pay this for electricity, to pay that for gas, to pay a rent because you didn't own the building. The requirement for profit was almost non-existent, let's say, 100, 150 years ago. Now it's the biggest requirement in our existence. So there's a very different mindset, a different setup for corporations and businesses and even individuals. But once that's all removed, then we're in a situation where we can exist with what we have. We don't have to produce millions and millions of cars. We don't have to produce millions and millions of fridges and freezers just because the company wants to stay in business. It's just build it until there's enough for a certain amount, and then the plant shuts down.
Or it is repurposed. I mean, what we're looking at here, if nothing changes, is we're looking at becoming the Ferengi civilization.
Yes.
And that's not something no, thanks. Umox, awesome, but not interested in their philosophies. I'm actually absolutely amazed we filled up an hour. I have no idea how we did it. I'd like to put it out as a thought exercise or even as a discussion. What would you do if profit was not a driving force? If you did not have to generate profit in any endeavor you did, what would you do? Where would you put your energies? Where would you look to make corrections or to add value to your community? And I asked this question a few times, and a number of people have come back with, I'd set up soup kitchens and shelters for the homeless, and they're not thinking about the question. It's not just you who have no need for profit, it's everyone that has no need for profit. Shelters, food lines, food banks wouldn't exist. There would be no requirement for them. There would be no homelessness. There would be no hunger. So, think about it. What would you do if the need for profit globally, universally, was non-existent? And there's an awful lot of people out there who've never asked that question before. And it's a question that needs to be asked because we are very soon getting there. And the sooner we can get people actually doing it, the more we can push this over the edge. Because we need to, we need to walk the walk. We need to do what we're expecting to see in the future. We can't just set our intent and then go about status quo. You have to set your intent and move towards your final goal. And don't look at the details. Look at the final outcome. And the final outcome is absolute freedom and the ability to access your value at any given time. And when you're able to do that, what would you do? Would you just sit on the beach and get fat? Would you study art? Would you study music? Would you continue being a brain surgeon? There's a lot of people out there who love to clean. And we've asked this question several times over the course of the years. And a number of people came back and says, well, I'm a housekeeper and that's what I like to do. So if there's anybody that needs their house cleaned, I'd be happy to do it. There's folks who, they thought about this question and they said, well, I would continue to work on the electrical grid. I'm a master electrician and that's what I do. And I like making sure everybody's lights are on. So I'll just keep doing that. They'll do what they'll love to do. They'll do what they're drawn to do. And, the little things like, well, who's going to take out the garbage? Well, take out your own damn garbage. Why do you need someone to come and pick it up for you? Why can't you deal with it yourself? First of all, you're going to generate a lot less garbage because you're going to deal with it yourself. Secondly, you actually see the impact that you're producing when you throw a bag of trash into some ravine somewhere. Which will change that because people will then demand a better alternative for the trash because they don't want to see the dump anymore. And, it comes back to one of the core precepts of the show, and that's personal responsibility. When the system rolls around, yes, you will have to be responsible for yourself in a lot of things. There won't be people out there who profit from you not wanting to do something. Now, there'll be people out there who will get profit from it, but it won't be monetary profit. It'll be goodwill more than anything. I mean, the guy who fixes your roof, you're going to remember that guy and you're going to send him a casserole at Christmas. It will work itself out. And it's pretty easy to see. I mean, there's civilizations on the planet right now that live in this fashion. And they're doing just fine. Yes, they could be considered primitive. They could be considered backwards, third world, whatever. But their systems will still work in the first world. We just have to get over the idea that you have to pay to exist. Because you don't.
That's another question, John, as well, that part of a discussion that I've had in the past when I've brought up the subject of no money and lack of employment because money doesn't exist and this idea of profit and corporations no longer exist. Therefore, one of their first questions is, well, how is our civilization going to grow then? How are we going to become this technological paragon that we've manifested over the last 100 years without the economic principles and the drive to profit and succeed and to become better?
Ooh. We just lose Carl? Wow. Discord was so good when we first started out, and now we're starting to lose people on it. That's not good. So I guess until Carl gets his stuff straightened out or gets back on, we'll have to bring out the rest of you folks. Anybody want to come and answer my question or get clarification on it? You want to discuss the possibilities? I mean, the possibilities are endless out there. And it doesn't matter what you want to do. It's going to have a value to it, to the community. I mean, even the people who weed the gardens have a value to the community. They're as important as everybody else, as far as I can see. Hi, Bree.
Hey, John. I was, mulling over what you and Carl were saying about everybody doing something, adding their piece, bringing their bit. And I was thinking of people like you who you're a maker, you love to make things, I know from what you've been saying so far. And I was thinking of people like me, for instance, who I'm absolutely non-specialized in anything specific. And at first glance, and I'm sure there's a lot of us out there, at first glance, or people specialize in totally useless, shit that would not be necessary in a normal world, in an organic world. But thinking about it, we are not useless, because in a thriving community, you actually also need some people to be moving around, to be, doing this today, taking the trash for 1 week, and then whatever, doing something else the next week, or to be more flexible, so to speak. So the other ones who are specialized and are needed, the bread maker needs to be able to make his bread every day so he can have it. A tool maker like you needs to be freed from other burdens to be able to make your tools, to create the things, because you need your free time also to make your music and whatever you love. So actually, people that are not specialized are also an asset for any community. And I never had a chance to, I don't know if anybody in the room is familiar with Ben Gross actually put up, he has a diagram of, it seems pretty workable, of a sustainable community and the type of set and skill sets that would be needed to make that community functionable. And I find it quite useful. Maybe it's not totally accurate, I don't know. My knowledge of it is not good enough to comment, more than the fact that I do find that the diagram, quite useful as a starting idea. And it's basically with about sales. Carl, are you back in voice? See?
Yes, I am. I was just listening to what you were saying there, Brianna.
Yeah, the skill set. So, I will let Carl pick up from here and leave it out open for discussion. What is your skill set, and what do you feel can make you useful also?
Well, just to add to that, Brianna, I've got another question for you, and that is when you describe yourself as non-specialized, is that actually a state, or is that simply because you haven't had the freedom to explore all of the stuff you want to do to find out if you could be specialized?
You're breaking up for me, so I hope I'm not talking over you. No.
No.
I know I haven't explored. For sure, I haven't explored all the things I would like to do, because I live in a city, and by itself, the city is completely limiting environment. I can't put my hands in the earth as I'd like to, so I don't know how good I would be with a garden. You can't compare balcony growing plants with, real earth. So yeah, I don't know. That's why I place myself under the, I don't know, because the skill sets I have are not, I speak several languages. Well, yeah, that'd be great when we have guests coming from other communities, because I could be out there helping them, showing them around. Because there will be people moving around from place to place, and we're still going to speak a lot of different languages. Oh, I guess, we need to get more imaginative, because right now we're so limited we're so programmed to think that a skill is something that has to fit in what is socially acceptable right now. That helps you survive the way the world is built right now, which survive means, do you know how to do something that actually makes money? And it's all because that's not what a skill set should be. So yeah, I encourage everybody to get out of that mindset and start thinking real, real skills, real things that could be of help. And you don't have to do the same thing. If you are one of those, and I sure am, who don't like to do repetitive things, you could be one of the, I don't know, John, come up with a name with that, or Carl.
It's called a polymath. And it's polymath is someone who is well versed in a number of different sciences or a number of different fields. And most of the celebrated thinkers throughout history were all polymaths. And they weren't specialized in any one specific thing. They had their fingers in a number of different pies, which is awesome. I mean, I've been labeled the same thing because I do a number of different things. And your idea about your balcony garden, if it doesn't really translate, well, it's actually a lot more difficult to grow successfully in containers than it is to grow in the earth. So if you were to move what skills you have in your balcony gardening into a plot of land, you would succeed. You've already got the skills. The land is actually easier to work with. So,
yeah. For those that can't remember John's phrase, use my phrase, a jack of all trades. It's the way I remember it. So, yeah, I was actually starting to kind of go a little bit into what I wanted to say. Yeah, exactly, Brianna. Jack of all trades, easier to remember. Where I wanted to go was mentioning, I think, to some extent, how we would continue to live and where we would continue to live. Because right now, through the requirements of the employment or the work that we do, or just through circumstance, we live in an area of the earth that allows us to do that. So one of the questions as well is, if we didn't have to work and do the kind of work that we are forced almost to do now, would we even stay where we are right now? Or would we move to another part of the country? Would we move to another part of the world? What would that entail? Would all of the, let's say, the equator-based countries suddenly become filled with people who previously lived further north, because all of a sudden they want to spend, 365 days of the year in the sun? Or would they be quite happy, spending a good portion of their life going through the seasons of, middle to upper Canada, for instance, or even the upper states of the US? That's one of the questions as well, because if you have the ability to move around and do whatever you want, where would you go? What would you do? Would you continue to travel, or would you decide that, moving to another country somewhere else is going to be that for the rest of your life as well, and allow you to do whatever it is that you wanted to do, to have the greatest happiness in your life? Because one of the discussions as well that I've had with Tara is our desire to have a simpler life, in one of those southern countries. But the problems that we face right now in that desire are limited because of the issues that we have to deal with in relation to children and their continued employment and education and so on, which we all know is, slavery and indoctrination. But that's what exists right now. and we can't be selfish necessarily of their means for the future. But again, if this system collapsed or changed, let's say, rather than collapsed, but changed into us being able to do whatever we wanted, wherever we wanted, would the children need to go through that indoctrination? Would they be required to seek skills to work so that they could make money? That's another question that we have to look at too. I think it's not just about us anymore, it's about those that we are responsible for. And we would also need to change how we interact with our children and how we train them for future life. So that's something else I wanted to bring up before I was rudely cut off.
There's so many answers to that question. The reason why I brought it up is to get people to think beyond the idea that, like the example that I gave. If it's because this is what we're talking about. What's coming is all expansive. It's not no one is left behind. There won't, unless you choose to be a bum and living on the streets. There's no need for you to do that anymore, because the resources will be available for everyone to have the same opportunities and exactly the same opportunities. Whether they want to avail themselves of them is totally up to them. So really the question is intended to get people to think beyond the system of lack, because it's not something we entertain a lot of. And yes, we dream about it. It'd be so nice to have all this money. But again, that's another, you're looking at the system from the system. And, what would it be like if you didn't have to have money? Okay. That's a little bit different viewpoint in that you don't have to acquire something else that you want. It's just there. You just go get it. If you want the really special stuff, if you want a hand-carved, custom-made 4-poster sleigh bed, then do something nice for the woodworker. And, let him know what you'd like and see if there's something you can do for him. There's still going to be exchange. And it could be a direct exchange, like you go to the woodworker and say, hey, I'm looking for a new bed. This is what I'd like. I'll mow your lawn for a year. There's going to be exchange like that. There's also going to be the indirect exchange where, like the farmer who produces, he just brings his stuff to town and people take what they require every day. And when he comes to town and he needs something, it's there for him. So there's going to be all of these play out. And the more we think about the potential, the more we put that energy out into the ethers, the faster and the more complete and more acceptable I think the outcome is going to become for us, because we're letting the universe know exactly what we're looking for. This is how we want to wind up. I don't care how we get there, just this is where I want to be in 2 years or 6 months, or, well, for most of us it was last month.
Agreed.
But I'm even in my own life, even in what I'm doing, none of the stuff that I've got, the businesses that I've set up for the internet to offer value to the public and get a pittance back from each one, which is, if I get enough people doing it, I actually make a living. It's not doing anything. It's not going anywhere. All of the stuff that I'm living on right now is coming from external sources. It's coming from places I didn't expect to see it come from. So don't put limits on any of this stuff. Don't put the limits on, well, if I do this, then I will get this. Because that's the lack mentality coming out again. And we need to look past that lack mentality into the abundance mentality, where you don't have an abundance of lack, you have an abundance of abundance. And abundance doesn't mean you have more than you need. Abundance means you have what you need when you need it. And you don't have to go hunt for it. You don't have to go look for it. It's there. It's available. Just go get it. That's what this kind of abundance actually means. So it's not about greed. It's not about having more than you actually are requiring. I mean, if you're an artist, yeah, you require brushes, you require canvas, you require paint. Those in that instance would not be considered luxuries. If you are a gardener and you have a garage full of woodworking tools that you don't use, then that would be, I wouldn't say unacceptable, but certainly not desirable in this system. So you take your garage full of woodworking tools, because you're not using them anyway, because you're a gardener, and you pass them on to the budding young woodworker in the community who loves you to pieces and makes you the most awesome a dining room set as a thank you. I mean, there's all kinds of ways to look at this. And it will work. We just have to have the collective will to make it work. Because it's not really a stretch when you really think about it. Okay, folks, I'm out of stuff to talk about. We need questions or something, because I'm at a loss.
So anybody who wants to unmute, just come in and have a suggestion about what they want to talk about, or questions about what we've discussed so far this morning, or even in the past shows. Or if you can't, maybe throw something in the chat there, and let's see what we can answer. Yeah, I mean, I would be just kind of right now continuing along the lines of the stuff that we've already discussed. It's a case of losing the fear, knowing who you are, and standing up to bullies as much as you possibly can. Because until you can exist in that higher state, and you can feel the joy, and you can feel the love, and you can manifest any kind of an abundance, then you're going to exist in that system of lack and fear and control that pretty much is surrounding us daily. And that's not to say that, even the best of us don't drop down there every now and again, because believe me, we do. But yeah, it's just something that we have to get out to as many people as we can, as quickly as we can. And this concept that John and I have discussed about not living in lack anymore, and comprehending that if, or rather when, this system changes, that we also are educated and knowledgeable enough to comprehend what it is that we're changing into. Because one of the other things that I think gets discussed is the bait and switch. They're crashing this system right now. They're giving us the lack of currency, this lack of money, this lack of the economy and commerce for the people, for the producers. And they're basically saying, well, this isn't working. We can't do this anymore. So we're going to collapse and crash this system, get away from it. And we've got this wonderful, beautiful system all the way over here. And this is going to be great for you. Just look how wonderful it is. And basically, it's slavery 2.0.
New and improved with low sodium.
Yeah. But if you don't know, then how are you going to decide whether that is a good system for us to move to? Or are you going to get more knowledgeable, more aware? And are you going to be able to stand up and say, no, I recognize that for what it actually is. And it's just you fuckers up there doing exactly the same as you've just done for the last 250 years. And I want none of it. This is what we need. And you don't know what you don't know. So we have to find out as much as we can. And if there is going to be a change in any kind of system, no matter what it is, whether it's money, whether it's a system of government, a system of voting, because even that was pure bullshit. We went from a card-based paper ballot system to an electronic system, and everybody said how wonderful and fast and great it could be. But of course, we know now that all it was just an easier way to manipulate the votes and the tallies, and had nothing to do with it being better or faster. So again, it's that having that knowledge, that comprehension about what could happen, and what most likely will happen based on a private secret system that will always degenerate into a way of power-hungry people controlling in secret for their own benefit.
Well,
It's pretty much what's happened in a lot of ways.
Oh, big time. As a rule of thumb, I mean, this doesn't always apply, but it's pretty much fits pretty much every situation. If somebody comes to you and says, "I've got the solution and you need it," run away. If they're trying to if they're trying to convince you you need something, they're selling it to you and you don't need it in the first place. You want to make the biggest difference, make your own decisions. Don't make decisions based on advertising. Don't make your decisions based on pressure or a belief system. Make your decisions based on the reality that's around you. And in all things, if you let somebody else make your decision for you, they will inevitably find ways to profit from it. Because that's the only reason why someone would take someone else's power away from them, even if they're given willingly, is because they want more than what they can produce for themselves. So they're taking other people's energies. Keep your energies, guys. Keep it in your own self. Learn for yourself. If you want to, I mean, I would love to build my own house. I've got almost all the skills I need to do, and I would love to be able to do that because then there's no questions. I know every single joint. I've reviewed every joint, every nail that's in the building. I know where it is. I know why it's there, and I know it's done right. I know it's done right in accordance with the way I understand right to be, which is not necessarily the same as anybody else, but I can also go way overboard and overbuild and know that, I'm not going to get 50 years out of this house. I'm going to get 500 years out of this house. It's nice going to the restaurant sometimes, but it's also really nice to make the omelet the way you want the omelet made. So, learn the skills. Don't be afraid of learning something new. That's got to be one of the biggest headaches that anybody who's ever tried to teach anything, that's their biggest headache, is that people don't want to learn. Years ago, I was on a debate. I used this story a few times, and the fellow I was debating, I put a phrase in there and I asked him, what he thought it means. And he says, I don't have to answer that. I pay people to think for me. And there's so much of that out there. People who, they've never been exposed to critical thinking. They've never been exposed to making their own decisions, especially with the hard stuff. And they're completely out of their water. And I sympathize totally, but we got to get them past that. We got to get the people out there to make the choices that benefit themselves, benefit their communities, and to live by those choices rather than have their choices made for them because of advertising and peer pressure or a system of lack. So this is where my question, it boils down to that kind of thinking. What would you do if money simply wasn't an issue ever for anyone? Where would you put your value? Where would you put your efforts? What could you do for the community? Now, you might say, well, I'm going to go sit by the lake every day for the next 25 years and compose a sonnet, which is no more or less valuable than someone who's going to walk around the parks and pick up the garbage out of the parks that people drop. It's the same value, because at the end, when this guy makes his sonnet, it's going to be something awesome. And it's going to be a beautiful piece of art, and people will love it. Could also be total crap, but it's still not a wasted life because he's learned a lot. He's got a lot of experience to pass on. He just has to. The only waste would be as if he refused to pass it on. And perspective matters. Everyone's perspective has the same value, and it doesn't matter whether one person thinks your perspective is right or wrong. It doesn't come to that. It's a perspective. It's your point of view. And when in any situation, Carl, you can back me up on this because I know you've been there. In any situation you've dealt with, the broader your perspective, the more points of view you can view it from, the more successful you're going to be at it. And it doesn't matter what it is.
Yeah, I can agree on that for sure. That's why I like the jack of all trades kind of concept, And my idea about becoming as knowledgeable on as many things as you possibly can, because it just goes to show that if you're unaware, you're incapable to some extent, because you don't know what you don't know, so you cannot make a judgment on something you have no understanding or concept of. And that's why the money system, when I talk about that, is one of the biggest issues.
Yep.
Because people don't know what it currently is. So how the hell can they have any concept or idea of what we move to being any better or worse? Which is why this bull crappery about the gold standard and about Bitcoin and whatever other cryptocurrency and this electronic form of money. It's people can think that everything is great and good and it's a wonderful idea, but unless they know both sides of the argument, they can't make an informed decision.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly what it is that you're talking about. Exactly what you're talking about. So one of my biggest things is always be as educated and as knowledgeable as you possibly can. And if you want to specialize in a particular subject, then that's fine. You have a particular interest, then specialize. But that doesn't mean to say that you have to remove all the other things and subjects in the world that are something that you should know about. And of course, if you're 30 or 40 or 50, especially 40 or 50 or 60 years old, gaining the knowledge about all these other subjects is a damn sight harder. Which is pretty much why I started at 8 years old and progressed from there. This is a lifetime thing. This is something that has to be done for all of our children, by all of our children from the earliest age. And the frustrating thing that I see is, video games and TV. And I look at some of the, I haven't seen TV for a couple of years, but now I've been down here. It's here. There's kids in the house and I see the TV, and unfortunately I cringe. I absolutely cringe at the shit that the programmers are putting out and showing to our kids, the newest generation of our kids. And it upsets me.
I don't know how many people have seen it, but there was a post on Facebook, I noticed it yesterday, about Disney-sponsored dildos. Now, there's supposed to be some kids' toys, but we all know what mold they came out of.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw that post.
It's programming. It's getting people jaded. When you play violent video games to the point where death doesn't even phase you anymore, is it going to be any different when it actually happens out in real life? Probably not, or at least certainly considerably less. So it's multi-generational. The shift is not going to happen overnight. If you think it will, it can start overnight. It can start in a really big way overnight, but it's not going to actually shift for generations, because there's very deep-seated belief systems that have to be changed, and those things aren't going away easily. Those of us who actually had belief systems altered, whether we did it ourselves or it came externally, it was a struggle. Now it's getting easier, definitely. The more we do it, the closer we get to it, the easier it's going to become. But it's work. It's you have to actually make the change. You have to make the choice and live that choice. Because if you make the choice and don't live the choice, then you're also choosing not to honor your own choices, which is not a good thing either. So,
Yeah, I it's funny you bring that up because one of the things that I think that might have been introduced to help people with this changing is one of the biggest ones, I think, is the flat earth theory. It's been going around for a long time. This is not a new concept. It has been continued to be discussed for a long time. But again, it's come up very recently in a very, very big way. And there is a certain understanding that people have that you have a belief system and your belief is set. And that is actually wrong. It should never be set. You should be able to entertain thoughts from every different area in relation to a belief system that you have, and that belief can change based on the evidence that's presented before you. Unfortunately, that tends not to happen, and what you usually end up with is the belief system sticking in place, and you're rigorous in your thoughts about the whole thing. You will never change that and religion is a big one, very, very big one, big programming. But the very fact that people have introduced this flat earth thing, I went for it straight away. It came into my consciousness quite a few years ago. And when somebody posted it in one of the groups I was in, my first response was exactly, who's this stupid idiot posting this shite? I thought we'd settled this 500 years ago. But that's not what we should be thinking. This was stuff that was introduced. I spent 20 minutes pretty much not in the chat group itself, but in my own mind. I was sat in front of the computer monitor, having a conversation with myself about how stupid this whole thing was and how I was going to ignore it and what crap. And then after 20 minutes, it clicked in my mind, well, hang on a minute. I've just completely and utterly ignored everything that this guy has said and presented right in front of me without even reviewing any of the at all. And John, this is something that we've seen many, many times with the concepts from the World Freeman Society. And the legal steps. All of this stuff is there. It's right out in front of everybody. And many people instantly refuse to accept it. And I chose the flat earth because that's one of the biggest ones that everyone completely ignores and calls rubbish. And I did the same thing until I sat down and looked at it and went through some of the evidence and some of the information that was put out there, and some of it from some of the sources I've looked at, and I can absolutely call that bullshit. You are stupid for creating that video. I'm sorry, but that is just utter crap. And if you believe it, the evidence is completely against everything that you've just said in this video. However, there are lots of other very, very interesting videos out there and websites that are and have put forward some very, really mind-bending thought forms and facts and information that really, really does make you think. And again, because I've spent so many years kind of reading up and researching on so many different subjects, I can spot bullshit to some extent, and others I can look at it and say, well, hang on a minute, I do have a kind of a knowledge about that from another area or another field, and actually what he's saying, that's really interesting. That I'm going to have to look into that. Now, I don't still have a belief one way or another over the flat Earth. But what I can tell you is that there are far too many questions that can't be easily answered for me to discount it completely. And I had the same thought process go on during my awakening for the free man concepts and for the legal system. I mean, I just spent 13 years as a cop, and 4 years later, I'm turned on my head about the whole concept. But again, because I had the understanding of the legislation, I'd gone through the training, and I knew what the words were. I knew what some of the laws were that were being talked about. I had information from one side, and now I was being introduced to information from the other side. Now I was able to make an informed decision. And in this case, my informed decision has taken me to a more full comprehension of the true nature of the legal system and legalese and the system that we live under.
Yep. And the important part of this is nobody can do it for you. You got to do it yourself. You have to sit down. You have to do the research. You have to do the thinking, and come to your own conclusions on this. And yeah, your conclusions are probably going to be different than mine and different than Carl's, and that's fine. That's the way the world works. But to simply blindly accept what someone else is telling you and assuming that is correct, that's a good way to get yourself into some fairly deep hot water.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we even have to look at our ideas of what truth is and how we can believe. Because somebody else was saying, well, we live on a globe. It's quite obvious. Just look up at the moon. Just look up at the sun. Just look up at Saturn through a telescope. Just look at Jupiter, Mars, all these extra planets out there. They're all globes, so we must be on a globe. And, my first thought for that and my response is, well, how can you even say that? Because you're looking up into a sky that what we know of is a sky. You have no clue what that actually is. Have you been up there? Do you know what it is? Do you know whether it's space, or is it a firmament that has something holographically projected on it? Are these planets, in quotes, that we see real or not? Unless you've been up there and can physically visit them and stand on them, you have no concept of whether that's true or not. So you're basing your evidence of what it is that we live on a perception from something that you're viewing and cannot factually authenticate. And yet that your belief is based on something that you cannot authenticate. And then you want to present that to me as your evidence and your facts. That's something that we have to get over and around as well. Which is one of the reasons even why we've stated stuff in the legal side of things. Don't make statements you can't back up.
Yep.
Don't ask questions you don't already know the answer to. All these things, these concepts, they spread across all of the different areas of life and the subjects that you can come across. And making a statement such as, well, the Earth is a globe because the moon's a globe. Well, do you know that the moon is a globe? Well, you see it with your eyes, but I can show you lots of illusions and make you think things with your eyes, but that doesn't mean to say it's true.
Yeah. Yeah, there's, when I'm looking at that topic specifically, a lot of the arguments that I've heard are patently ridiculous. If we're spinning at 1,100 miles an hour, how come we're not being blown off the surface of the Earth? Just completely silly things that they never really actually thought through. Some of the empirical evidence that I am aware of is, well, rockets, when they launch a rocket, the rocket tends to go east. Because if they went west, it would cost them an extra 50% in fuel to overcome the initial angular momentum that the planet produces. Large bridges, when they make a large span bridge over several miles, they have to take into account the curvature of the Earth, and the top of the bridges are a couple of inches farther apart than the bottom piers of the bridges. I mean, frankly, from my point of view, it doesn't exist because it's just a ball of energy. And what we perceive as hard matter is nothing more than our perception of energetic fields. So it doesn't matter whether it's a ball or a sphere, it doesn't exist. Only our perceptions exist. I mean, so I don't entertain either one of them. I don't particularly care because none of it matters. And I mean,
well, that's become my viewpoint. Yes, it was an interesting thought process and an interesting thought form, but do I still need to go on that subject and have a final decision on it? Well, not really, because what's important in my life has nothing to do whether the Earth is flat or a globe. It has more to do with who I find important in my life, who I love in my life, the work that I'm doing, and the information that I can spread out to everybody else on the subjects that I know about, in an effort to make other people's lives better. That's what's important to me, not whether the Earth is flat or not, but the questions that are raised by bringing that subject up. And again, I'm going to quote this phrase, that it's the measure of an intelligent mind to be able to entertain a thought without accepting that thought. And that's really what this was all about. You simply have to be able to intelligently review the information that's put before you on both sides and then make an informed decision. And that's part of the process that we have to go through, rather than accepting blindly information that we are receiving from all the sources of the information that we receive. Much of that from, newscasts, TV programs, adverts, newspapers, and generally what people say in the church on Sunday morning, if you happen to go. It's all that stuff. It's everything. And once you get that, once you comprehend that, then your way of thinking changes. The way that you assimilate information and subject matter all changes. Hopefully for the best.
Yeah.
It doesn't sound crazy.
Well, and in the long run, we don't know where this is going. We can see the trends. We can see the possibilities. We can see likelihoods with the direction that all of this stuff is taking, but we really don't know at the end where it's going to wind up. So with that in mind, let's just keep, our best outcome in the forefront, and trust that everybody's best outcome is going to be the best for all. It's going to be the one that we're truly wanting. And, we may still need contrast from time to time. We may still need, devil's advocates, Team Dark, whatever you want to call them, on occasion to keep us on our toes and to keep us thinking about new ways, because we certainly don't want to stagnate. But let's keep in mind, the possibilities. Where could this wind up? Where could this go? And what would that look like? And I guess that's your homework for the week. I don't know even if we'll revisit it next week. It's hard to say from one week to the next because stuff is happening so fast now. And pretty much all of us, everybody in all the groups that I'm with, we're all sort of, we got the feeling that we're done. We've done our jobs. We're waiting for the fireworks now. And I'm sure there's folks out there who still feel like they don't have enough hours in the day and they got lots and lots of work to do. To those, I sympathize. You'll get it done. No worries. If you weren't the one, or they weren't the best one for the job, you wouldn't be the one doing it. So thank you very much. But a lot of us we're just kind of in a holding pattern now, and I'm certainly there, finding it really hard to stay focused on anything specific. Everything I do just seems like it's just putting in time. The importance, the urgency, I guess, is a better word for it, has gone out of a lot of the things that I believed I was here to do, which is kind of a good feeling. It's a little scary because I'm not absolutely certain that I am, in fact, done, because I didn't really know what I was here to do. I may still have more to do. Who knows? But I'm open to the possibility. I'm also open to the possibility that I'm finished and I did what I'm here to do, and now it's just a matter of making friends and getting ready for the party.
Well, we're still doing the shows, so
Yeah,
we are still functioning, and we're still doing, I guess, what we started out doing so long ago, and we went through the phases of, backing away from it and then getting back into it again and backing away from it. But all along, we have strived to get this information out that we've obtained over so many years to people that needed to know it. But as you've said in the past, one of the things that we're noticing a lot these days is that when we started, nobody was talking about this. They were all talking about, what happened at the last Knicks game, or, what happened on Dancing in the Stars, whatever the hell program was fashionable 15 years ago, These days, you can hear people in all different walks of life, in all different areas, talking about the stuff that we talk about now, the realities, and how things in their perception have changed so weirdly, but they are actually talking about it, whereas before that just wasn't happening. And I guess that makes us feel that a little bit like our work is done, because we're not talking about that stuff anymore. We don't need to talk about that stuff anymore to the extent that we used to, because now we can hear other people doing the talking and we just leave them do it.
Yep.
Before we might have gone in ourselves to educate them. Now we don't need to much anyway.
Yeah, this is also why I'm kind of happy with having a really open format on this show, is because what we talk about during the show is what needs to come out at that time. And by being organic, being loose with the format, we can switch tracks in a moment's notice, and some of you probably recognize we do. We've done that a number of times.
Yeah.
But we get through one topic, we get one thought out, and then another thought comes in, and we go explore that a little bit. And I'm allowing it to be. I'm pursuing it, being driven by the universe, being driven by the collective, because a lot of this stuff, I have no idea. When I push the button to start the show, I typically have no idea what I'm going to talk about, but we usually wind up filling 2 hours, which is surprising. And I just let it happen, which is a good thing. So, folks,
well, it's okay. It's okay filling the 2 hours, John. The thing is keeping people listening during that 2 hours.
This is true. Well, we have a few stalwart supporters that we could talk about electronics and they'd still be here. Thank you very much, folks. I appreciate the support. Makes it worth getting up in the morning on a Sunday morning. So on that note, guys, y'all have a great day. Danny's show at 1 o'clock in 2.5 hours is going to touch on some of the stuff that we talked about. They'll probably go into it in a lot more detail. They're going to be discussing cryptocurrencies and the potential for that being just another slavery 2.0. Should be a good discussion. So hope to see some of you there, and thank you very much, Carl. I know you're driving for the rest of the day or pretty soon, and so have a safe trip, and stay away from the guys with guns, because they're not nice people. They're not nice people these days.
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, and appreciate it, John, as always, co-host and producing, of course. Thanks for everybody that listens live and those that listen later on. We just, we get a kick out of the fact that you get a kick out of it. So hope to see you all next week, and have a great week, everybody. Bye for now.
Bye bye, all.